And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
And welcome once again to On the Money. It's your daily weekday dose of economics, business and consumer news. I'm Liam Halligan, and the next hour here on GB News Television and GB News DAB Radio, we'll be talking about the local churches, the village halls, the community groups, who say the telecoms giants are depriving them of millions of pounds in rent for siting their mobile phone masts. We hear also from Northern Ireland about rows over red and green diesel, and reflect on the financial impact of the current political turmoil. All that and more on The Money after the GB News headlines with Rosie Wright.
Good afternoon, it's 1 minute past 1. I'm Rosie Wright to get you up to date here on GB News. Labour is demanding the Sue Gray report into alleged parties at Downing Street during lockdown is to be published in full. It's after Cabinet Ministers suggested the findings may be redacted for security reasons. Well, during Prime Minister's questions, Sir Keir Starmer accused Boris Johnson of misleading Parliament and called for his resignation. He also says police are investigating the most serious and flagrant type of breach in the rules.
On the 8th of December, he told this House, I will place a copy of the report in the library of the House of Commons. His spokesperson has repeatedly stated that means the full report, not parts of the report, not a summary of the report, not an edited copy. So can the Prime Minister confirm that he will publish the full Sue Gray report as he receives it?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, what I can tell him is that we've got to leave the report to the independent investigator, as he knows, and of course, when I receive it, I will do exactly what I said.
The Labour Party says the Prime Minister's position is now untenable. Well, here's what residents in the Prime Minister's constituency have had to say.
This party stuff is absolutely sickening. I haven't seen my 86-year-old mother in India for about, getting on for 2.5 years now.
It probably has happened, but it's no big deal. When you're all working together in an office anyway, what's the difference between sitting in an office or going outside and having drinks?
I'd support him, always have done. I don't think they need a report to tell where you've gone wrong.
Yeah, I guess it's time for him to move on.
In other news now, European diplomats are working to ease tensions between Russia and Ukraine during talks in Paris. Moscow has amassed around 100,000 troops on its border with Ukraine and has sent more fighter jets to Belarus, where it's been holding military drills. The US President Joe Biden has warned he'd consider personal sanctions against President Putin if Russia invades. Well, Russia expert Keir Giles told GB News Ukraine faces the possibility of air and missile strikes from Russia.
Even if it's not a land invasion, let's look at how Russia gets its way in military conflicts, as we've seen in, for example, Syria. They think that terrorizing the civilian population by bombarding them with air and missile strikes is a good way to win a war. So that is the kind of threat that Ukraine is actually now facing, and it's a real one because Russia does have both the capability and they've shown the will to do it.
A woman's been arrested on suspicion of murder after the death of a 5-year-old boy in Coventry. Police say it's believed the suspect knew the child. The boy was found with serious injuries at a property in Earlsdon yesterday afternoon. His death was confirmed at the scene. A man charged with the murder of his teenage daughter in Norfolk is due to appear in court today. 19-year-old Lauren Malt died of chest and abdominal injuries after being hit by a car in West Winch on Sunday. Her father, Nigel Malt, will appear at Kings Lynn Magistrates Court later. A former primary school teacher has been charged with animal cruelty after a video which appeared to show her punching and kicking a horse was made public. A warning now, we're about to show you the incident which you may find distressing. 37-year-old Sarah Moulds was fired from her job after the video was shared on social media. The RSPCA will argue that she caused unnecessary suffering to the horse. She'll appear before Boston Magistrates Court on Monday. From Friday, people in Wales who test positive for coronavirus will be able to finish self-isolating after 5 full days instead previously of 7. They'll still, though, need to produce 2 negative lateral flow tests taken on days 5 and 6. In Northern Ireland, vaccine passports are being scrapped for hospitality venues and cinemas from midday. Nightclubs will also be allowed to reopen, along with the return of indoor standing events. You will still need to provide proof of jabs to go to a nightclub or a large event. Proposals are being put forward to ensure people behind the wheel of a self-driving car aren't held legally responsible if they then have a crash. The Law Commission of England and Wales and the Scottish Law Commission want there to be immunity from prosecution if anything goes wrong, like speeding or running a red light. You are up to date now here on GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now, On the Money and Liam.
And coming up on The Money today, the UK's mobile phone giants, are they guilty of crony capitalism? That's certainly the view of campaigners representing churches, sports clubs and other local community groups who say law changes have seen them deprived of rent for siting phone masts. We're reporting also from Northern Ireland, where a long-standing row over so-called red and green diesel is heating up. Plus, each day on The Money features an in-depth Money Talks interview with a business leader or policymaker. Today, given the drama at Westminster, we're joined by a former Tory cabinet minister who has something to say. You'll want to stick around for that. And as ever, I want your questions, opinions, ideas. What do you think of the issues raised in today's On the Money? Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet @GBNews. I'll read out some of your messages later in the show. So stay with us on GB News TV and radio. This is GB News. I'm Liam Halligan. You're On the Money. Now, away from the political fray, community groups across Britain are missing out on millions of pounds in rent payments from telecoms giants for phone masts on their land. Since government rule changes in 2017, local schools, churches, sports clubs and visitor centres have been urging ministers to overturn controversial rules that led to a recalculation of rental values, leaving organisations and individuals who'd signed rental deals with telecoms companies to site their masts significantly out of pocket. The Digital Economy Act saw rents reduced by up to 90% for those hosting masts and other telecoms infrastructure, hitting thousands of local clubs, community groups and small businesses. Research from the think tank, the Centre for Economics and Business Research, suggests those site owners have collectively lost, wait for it, £2,009 million in rent each year since that 2017 law change. And today, amidst all the other drama at Westminster, further legislation has been placed before Parliament, making it even harder to appeal against arbitrary rent cuts demanded by the mobile network operators, who make a combined annual profit of around £30 billion a year. Campaigners want that 2017 legislation reversed, accusing ministers of being tin-eared and favouring the telecom giants. The government instead proposes a complex complaints process to manage negotiations between site owners and mobile phone operators. Now, as it happens, BT, Virgin Media and Vodafone have announced a string of inflation-busting price rises, adding to the cost of living crisis. And when it comes to this mobile mast controversy, the telecom giants say they're balancing the claims of those whose land they rent alongside the need to pay for an improved broadband network, improving UK connectivity. Now, this is a complex issue, but important issues often are complex. And while I personally remain open-minded from what I've heard and read about this issue, it does strike me as an example of powerful corporate interests getting their own way at the expense of everyone else. But this show is all about discussion, so let's discuss. And that's your on-the-money question today. Are the UK's telecom giants guilty of crony capitalism? Here on The Money, we have grown-up discussions with people who really know their stuff. Cue Doug McWilliams. He is from the Centre for the Economics and Business Research, who did that insight into the mobile phone mast controversy from the CEBR. Great to see you on the show, Doug. Catherine Bradshaw is the club secretary at Fox Lane Sports and Social Club, which has had a contract with Orange and now with EE for masts sited on its grounds. 12 years of rent from phone providers has kept this volunteer-led cricket ground going, and these cuts will hit them hard. In the studio, she's back. It's Meryn Somerset-Webb. She's the editor-in-chief of Money Week. Great to see you in the studio, Meryn. And, of course, I can't keep him away. It's Justin Urquhart-Stewart. Our answer to Gordon Gekko. There he is, red braces in place. There's a rumour he actually sleeps in them, but it's unsubstantiated. Maybe I'll ask him. Let's go first to Doug McWilliams. Doug, great to see you on the show. CEBR, it's one of our leading commercial economic think tanks. You were asked by campaigners, weren't you, to look into this issue of rents granted for mobile phone mast sightings before and after that 2017 law change. What did your researchers find?
The main thing that the research found was that the churches, cricket clubs and all sorts of other people who rent out their mobile phone masts, they are going to lose about £200 million a year. It's a drop of 63% in their incomes. But also, it looks as if the rollout of masts has got delayed by all this. So actually, the telecom companies are shooting themselves in their feet, because had we had a more rapid rollout, they would be likely to make a lot more money, and that would easily pay for the payments that they are making in rent and could still be making in rent.
Catherine, let's go to you. You are the secretary of the long-established Fox Lane Sports and Social Club up there in Leylands in Lancashire. Fantastic part of the country. This is a complex issue. I've tried to boil it down and make it as simple as possible, but I can't do better than you. Tell us the impact on the ground at your sports and social club of this 2017 law change.
It's a massive impact on our club, this law change. We've been fighting it for a long time, ever since we were told we would get £790 a year instead of £7,900. This money comes to us in February each year and has done for the last 15 years, giving us a total of about £90,000 to help to keep this ground up and running. The whole site, it's one of the oldest in the country, cricket sites, but we've got tennis courts as well, bowling greens, we've social facilities, and we look after bringing children into sport from 4 years of age, right the way up into seniors, and we've got people, part of our bowling club, who are way in the 90s. So this is something that is, in our area, there is nothing else like it. Within South Ribble, that is the sporting club that we need in this operation. Now, the thing is, if we lose this money, where are we going to find it? How are we going to raise that extra money each year? And the big issue is that some of these places are going to close down. Now, the mass people it's a multi-million-pound business, and why the government don't think they shouldn't pay the going rate, I have no idea. And I mean, from my perspective, I've said, look, if you're not going to pay the going rate, take it down. We don't want it on our side. Simple as that.
Very, very interesting. Justin, let me put that to you. You and I, we often talk about big companies. We feature them here on The Money. We talk about stocks and shares bobbing around, going up and down, making money, dividends for ordinary people, but the big returns are for wealthy people. That person there who runs a cricket club, that club, it's been around since the 1850s. It was getting 7,800 quid a year. After this law change, it's only going to get less than £800 a year.
And the company should be listening to what's happening. What's that annoying acronym we've got at the moment? ESG. Environmental, sustainable, and governance.
That's right.
That governance? No, it's nice to see a good independent regulator like Ofsted actually not getting involved in this. This is a wonderful, nice little earner for those clubs. That's the whole idea of it. And to actually get it, have the network rolled out across the country very quickly indeed, it achieved it. And the actual value to the large companies themselves is almost irrelevant. Frankly, they should be actually using this to their benefit and saying, actually, we're actually now going to actually reverse the whole process and actually provide some sponsorship for it. That way, they might even sign up some clients, heaven forfend.
Merrin, you run the best-known finance magazine, if you like, in the UK, Money Week. You write in detail about companies. But I know Money Week also has a big social conscience. So what's your take on this?
Justin said this is about ESG, and we've got so much pressure on companies at the moment to fulfil these environmental, social, governance criteria. And this comes right down to social. We hear so much about how companies should be aware of the community around them. There's a classic example of how they're clearly not aware of the community that exists around them. Now, the big problem here is not so much the rent levels themselves, it's the change in rent levels. You know, all these clubs will have agreed to have a mask because they're expecting to get thousands of pounds. Then a couple of years later, you turn around and say it's not thousands of pounds, it's a couple of hundred quid, if that. It's that change in expectations that is a really important thing. And it's also hard to see how, if they want to increase the mask coverage around the UK, if you go to someone and say, actually, it's going to be 200 quid and we might cut that to 50p in a couple of years, where are those new masks going to come from?
Doug, let me turn to you. I know you and your colleagues at CBR have looked at this in detail. It strikes me from where I'm sitting, it's almost like yes, there's been a law change, but it's a law change that undermines previously written contracts. Is that how it strikes you?
That's correct. And actually, when the Law Commission looked at it, they put forward a much more balanced proposal, which would have given everyone equal rights. Now, often, you sometimes have to compromise between what's the fairest solution and what's the most efficient solution. It just so happens at this time that actually the fairest solution is also the efficient solution, because the delays in rollout that are emerging from the way that this is being handled, with all sorts of masks going to legal issues, or indeed, as the lady was saying from the cricket club, they are threatening to pull the masks down because it's not economic for them to keep it up. There's a lot more access required for these sort of masks than there is for example, electricity pylons. All this, it could be solved just simply by paying people properly.
Catherine Bradshaw, let's give you the last word on this. We do like to highlight these complex issues here on The Money and give local community leaders a voice. So what is your message here on national television, here on GB News, to those telecoms giants?
My message is just pay us the money that you agreed to pay us in the first place. And it's simple. We need that money desperately to keep our facilities running. And we can't afford to just get £790 or £780 a year instead of £7,800. Just pay us the money, and that'll be fine. And then you're looking after the communities around the UK, some of which have very little in them. I mean, we're lucky we have this site. We're all volunteers. We don't get paid to run it. And we keep it going because we love the area. We love the site. It's been there since 1848, and we want it to continue to be there. But we need this money to keep us going.
The View, Justin from Lancashire. to our big telecoms corporates? Fewer woke utterances, a bit more cash?
No, but companies should learn to behave. I mean, do companies have a conscience? Not always. But actually, they're now going to be measured on conscience in the future. They're going to have to come out with statements saying, we're behaving properly, we're doing things the right way. Here's a classic example of getting it wrong, but here's a marvellous example where they could actually win some brownie points over it and show people actually this is the right way to behave. Grow up and get on with it.
As ever here on The Money, grown-up discussions with people who know their stuff. Thank you to all my guests. Doug McWilliams of the CEBR, Catherine Bradshaw up there in Lancashire, also to Merrin Somerset-Webb, who'll be staying with us, and Justin Urquhart-Stewart. We asked for reaction and response, of course, from BT, from Vodafone, Virgin and EE. An EE spokesperson told GB News, EE values good relationships with landlords, and we share the common interest of delivering modern communications that support them and the negotiations with the national need to invest in connecting more people, especially in remote areas. EE's built hundreds of new sites and upgraded thousands more, many in the remote areas of the UK, since the code was changed to support digital rollout. And then we heard from a spokesperson for Speed Up Britain. That represents all telecoms operators, and they said Speed Up Britain's committed to providing any further support we can to accelerate the needed rollout. By enabling quicker and easier rollout across the country, we can fulfil our promise of improving connectivity and coverage across the UK, enabling the UK to become a leader in 5G and realise billions of pounds of additional economic output that a connected country deserve. They also claimed that the average rent reduction is 63%, with a proportion of 90% reductions very low. But they didn't respond to my personal request for evidence of where this figure comes from. Now, this is On the Money. We value discussion above everything else. So, UK telecoms giants, you have an open invitation to appear on this show. I'm here. The studio door is ajar. Do come and explain your case. If nothing else, it makes for better television than hiding behind emailed statements and industry-wide lobby groups. This is On the Money with me, Liam Halligan, after the break. One of the UK's top financial writers, Merrin Somerset-Webb. She's going to be with us to talk more about the markets and her new book. And your emails are flooding in thick and fast. We'll be reading some of those shortly. Stay with us. This is On the Money.
Hello again. Dry and cloudy once more for most today, but overall, generally a little brighter than most days so far this week. A bit more sunshine around, but there will be some rain in the northwest being created by this deepening area of low pressure that's also going to bring some very strong winds tonight across northern Scotland. But let's deal with the weather fronts first of all, bringing some rain across the Highlands and the Western Isles and the Northern Isles later today. But elsewhere, high pressure is still in control, so most places dry. And as I mentioned, it's a little brighter, certainly over the Midlands, parts of eastern England, generally brighter skies compared to recent days with a bit of sunshine at times. And it's a bit warmer as a result as well. Where it stays gloomy, temperatures struggling, but generally up to 8-9 degrees. It is going to turn very windy, though, tonight as the rain pushes southwards through the central belt and into Northern Ireland. We will see the winds really picking up, especially across Orkney, where gusts of 70 miles an hour, maybe even a little bit more for a time, are likely to cause some disruption, particularly to travel services. So there is a Met Office yellow warning in place here. Generally, it'll be a milder night as well, with temperatures mostly holding up 4 or 5 degrees above freezing at least. But it will be a damp start, certainly for parts of the Midlands, South Wales, a grey, damp start for Cardiff and Swansea. And some of that patchy rain trickles into southwest England during the course of Thursday morning. But generally then skies brighten up once more, with most places seeing a bit of sunshine during Thursday afternoon. Temperatures will be higher as well. 11 or 12 there in Cardiff and London, but only 6 or 7 in the far northeast Aberdeen, and there will be a strong wind blowing here. It will ease down as we go through Thursday morning and continue to ease down during the evening, and that means with clear skies on Thursday night, we will see a widespread frost on Friday morning. But high pressure is back for Friday, so for most it's a dry and a fine day. Weather fronts, though, and an increasing number of isobars mean spells of wet and windy weather are likely this weekend.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview Channel 236.
On Sky, we're Channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back. You're on the money with me, Liam Halligan. Now, Money Week editor-in-chief Mary Somerset Webb was with us earlier in the show, and she's still here. Mary started her career in Tokyo at the public broadcaster NHK before becoming a Japanese equity broker. Several years on, but not too many.
Thank you, Liam.
She's not only the editor-in-chief of Money Week, she's also an FT columnist and non-executive director of 3 investment trusts. But the reason I want Mary on the show is because of her columns, because of her journalism, and because of her new book, which has just been published. It's called Share Power, How Ordinary People Can Change the Way that Capitalism Works and Make Money Too. Now, Mary, I've read your stuff over many years. You and I both, we've often written about how capitalism can go wrong. We're both big supporters of capitalism. We both believe in financial markets, in free markets, if you will. And that's why we like to call out markets when they go wrong. And that's basically what your book's about, isn't it?
That's what I'm trying to do here. You know, there's a big move at the moment to somehow reform capitalism and have a better kind of capitalism. There are endless books out there. I mean, you'll have seen piles of them. I've got piles of them explaining.
I almost wrote several of them.
I'm sure you've written several of them about how we can radically reform capitalism, change everything. And so I wanted to get involved in the argument because I don't think we need to radically reform capitalism. I think it works absolutely brilliantly, and we can see that around us. You know, we saw that all the way through the pandemic. You know, it was capitalism, that sense of companies stepping up to the market, created the vaccines, did everything. I mean, what did we have? We had a couple of weeks when you couldn't get enough loo paper. Right, actually, I never had a shortage of loo paper. I don't know about you, but that was the worst that happened in terms of the way companies behaved during the pandemic. They adjusted their behaviour. They, started to deliver. Restaurants changed to home delivery, etc. The corporate world really stepped up to the market in an incredibly flexible way. And if you want a demonstration of how brilliant capitalism is, I think that's as good as it gets. And also, of course, capitalism is the only system, to the extent it's a system, it really works with the way we are. We're natural improvers, accumulators.
I'm sensing a but.
But
there it is.
But that's exactly. But we have lost our connection with capitalism. We've lost our connection, in particular, with the corporate world. Companies being the building blocks of our economies. Right? Everything is about a company and how they operate and how we engage with them. Now, we're all shareholders in the UK. Well, the majority of us are shareholders, thanks to our amazing auto-enrolment system, whereby pretty much everyone has a pension if they're in work. Via those pensions, we own shares. We own a part of all the big companies in the UK and lots of big companies around the world. And that should give us some influence over the way companies work. You know, we sit around complaining about how companies work.
Shareholders have voting rights
Yeah,
if the companies are listed on stock markets, as so many of our big companies are.
Every share comes with a vote. Now, we've just sat around in your last segment complaining about the way big companies behave, as though there's nothing we can really do about it. But if every share comes with a vote, and we all own shares, we should be able to do something about it. We should be able to use the power that we have via our shareholdings to change the way, or at least to affect the way companies behave.
Now, economists talk about the separation of ownership and control, don't they? It's a concept going back 50 years or more when we analyse how economies work. And it means that you have shareholders, but they don't always exercise their votes. The big institutions don't always exercise their votes. They're too busy doing other things. And people, as you say, like a lot of our viewers who are auto-enrolled in pensions, they may hold little slithers of shares here and there, but they will be managed by an asset manager, managed by an investment company, and they don't always exercise their votes. At the heart of your book, and it's in keeping with a lot of your columns over many years and discussions we've had over the years, you are calling for sort of democratic capitalism, aren't you? A reinvigoration of owners of companies, shareholders, to exercise their voting rights, to force companies not only to become more efficient and make more money and pay more dividends, but to be responsible corporate citizens too.
Well, that's exactly right. And I'm not saying you should tell companies to do anything at all. I don't know whether people in general think that they should behave in a particularly environmental way or a social way or a governance way. I don't know if people want more dividends or more profits. That's not what I'm calling for. What I'm calling for is for everyone to be able to have a view and to use their vote. Now, the way it used to be, where a very small number of people used to own shares in the UK, so go back to the 1960s, 70s, around 3% of the population owned shares. They tend to own those shares directly. So they knew they had a relationship with the company. They would go to AGMs, they could vote, maybe they had discount shareholder perks with Marks & Spencer's 10%.
We used to call it the Aunt Agatha model, didn't we? Wealthy old ladies who've inherited money going to an AGM and putting their hand up to the management.
They knew. But now people don't know. As you say, most money is managed by huge fund management companies. So, you know, BlackRock, the largest asset manager in the world, they manage around $10 trillion worth of money. I mean,
10,000 billion.
Yeah, a lot of money, right? And they're the ones who have the say, because we have effectively, by investing our money via them, we have delegated our votes to the big institutions, and we leave them to decide what a company should or shouldn't do. And boy, do they ever decide. There's a lot of pressure on companies from these big asset managers to behave in certain ways. Now, I would say maybe those asset managers are right in what they want companies to do. Maybe they're not. But it's not their votes. They're our votes.
That's right.
We should be the ones telling companies what to do. Now, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the technology didn't really exist for the big fund managers to ask us what we want. But it does now. It's remarkably straightforward for a big company, a big asset manager, to say to all the people who have tiny holdings in the many funds, tell us what you want.
Yeah, send an email, 4 options, A, B, C or D. It could be done literally in the click of a mouse, in the blink of an eye. Maren, you know, in our financial journalism careers, we've had the late 90s crash, we've had the dot-com crash in the early 2000s, we've had the 2008 financial crisis. Share prices now are looking quite shaky. We could spend, a whole week talking about that. It's not good for the name of capitalism, is it? Do you think capitalism needs a makeover to re-enhance its reputation among ordinary people? Because it keeps causing crashes.
It does keep causing crashes, but that's about the amount of money that goes into markets, comes out of markets. It's about liquidity, it's about interest rates, it's about people getting very excited about particular things. So for the last 4 or 5 years, we've all been terribly overexcited about American growth stocks, about technology stocks, and we look very far into the future and we value them on stories as opposed to money. And we're beginning to see a reverse of that now. So that's kind of what's happening at the moment. But one of the things that has happened also over the last couple of years, which I'm really excited by, has been a tiny silver lining to the pandemic, if one could find a silver lining, which is that so many people at home, so many people with extra time, and also a very large amount of people with extra money in their pockets they wouldn't have had otherwise, have started fully engaging with the stock market, looking for a huge number of new investors coming into the market, looking at how it operates, looking at companies, beginning to understand that they have this power as investors. And that's a very positive change.
Well, Maren, it's great to see you in the studio. I know you've travelled all the way from your home in Edinburgh to talk to us today. We really appreciate it. Your book is called Share Power by Maren Somerset Webb. It was published last week. It's always good to see you in the studio, and I know you will join us again as one of our regular panellists. Merrin Somerset Webb there. This is On the Money with me, Liam Halligan. Coming up, amidst all the political turmoil, today's Money Talks interview with a former Tory cabinet minister. This one you won't want to miss. But first, it's the GB News headlines with Rosie Wright.
Good afternoon, it's 1:33. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date in the GB News newsroom. The Prime Minister's spokesperson has confirmed Number 10 has not received the Sue Gray report into alleged parties at Downing Street during lockdown and doesn't know if the inquiry has been completed. Labour is demanding the report be published in full. It's after Cabinet Ministers previously suggested the findings may be redacted for security reasons. European diplomats are trying to ease tensions between Russia and Ukraine in talks in Paris. Moscow has amassed around 100,000 troops on the border with Ukraine and has sent more fighter jets to Belarus, where it's been holding military drills. US President Joe Biden has warned he'd consider personal sanctions against President Putin if Russia invades Ukraine. A woman's been arrested on suspicion of murder after the death of a 5-year-old boy in Coventry. Police say it's believed the suspect knew the child. The boy was found with serious injuries at a property in Earlsdon. His death was confirmed at the scene yesterday afternoon. A man charged with the murder of his teenage daughter in Norfolk is due to appear in court. 19-year-old Lauren Malt died of chest and abdominal injuries after being hit by a car in West Winch on Sunday. Her father, Nigel Malt, will appear at King's Lynn Magistrates Court later today. From Friday, people who test positive for coronavirus in Wales will be able to finish self-isolating after 5 full days instead of 7. They'll still need to produce 2 negative lateral flow tests taken on days 5 and 6. Vaccine passports have also been scrapped in Northern Ireland for pubs and restaurants, with nightclubs now allowed to open for the first time since Boxing Day. You're up to date here on GB News. We're on your TV, online and DAB Plus radio. I'll keep you up to date across the afternoon. A short break now, and then we'll be back to On the Money and Liam.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview Channel 236.
On Sky, we're Channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 1:37. You're on the money with me, Liam Halligan, here on GB News Television and DAB Radio. Now, the government have halted the use of so-called red diesel in the construction industry in what ministers say is a pro-environment move. Taxed at a lower rate than regular diesel, red diesel will only be allowed for use in agriculture, rail transport and non-commercial heating from now on. This controversial measure is being seen by the construction sector as a straight tax rise on their industry rather than a green policy, and could be especially damaging at a time when costs are already rising. Our Northern Ireland reporter Doogie Beattie has more.
This is basically subsidies in a jar. It's red diesel. It pays less tax than ordinary white diesel, and it was brought about so as vehicles like this behind me could run more cost effectively. This fuel was first introduced in 1961 and was there to help with the costs of infrastructure, road building and agriculture. But because of green legislation, it may now be under threat. From the 1st of April, red diesel will no longer be available to the construction and building industry. This means the price of raw materials will rise.
This will cost the industry millions of pounds, and ultimately is a tax grab from the government. We have consulted with industry leads. This will impact construction, waste management. It will also impact hauliers who are hauling fresh food. And it's important that the government get the message loud and clear that this will put construction firms out of business, and it will see mass job losses across the industry.
With the cost of living on the up and the private sector only in recovery from a pandemic, the shock of the loss of a subsidy will cause financial pain that has to be passed on.
The cost will be passed on a number of fronts. Within our sector, the big concern is that we carry out most of the work in the north for the government, and so therefore the cost increases, we will eventually pass those on to government, either on existing contracts or on future contracts that we will be pricing.
Countries such as the south of Ireland will still be using its subsidised fuel, and this makes competition a problem on an island with no borders.
That is one area that's of concern. We would carry out about 15% of our workload in the Republic of Ireland, and obviously the removal of the rebate will mean that we are less competitive whenever it comes to pricing work against our competitors in the Republic.
This green policy will be rolled out right across the UK, and with so many machines on sites full of white diesel, theft will only add to the problems.
We've already started a rollout programme of increasing security at our depots where we dispense fuel from. This may be by the introduction of CCTV cameras. We are also looking into introducing anti-siphon devices to all our vehicles. Diesel is diesel. Red diesel is diesel with a dye in it. So removing the rebate means we have to start using diesel. There will be no reduction in carbon emissions until such times as alternative plant is made available, which is equally productive using greener alternative methods.
Food production on farms will not be directly affected, although those using the fuel on HGVs for frozen food and generators will have to examine the law very closely.
Green issues are important to us all, but is it wise to replace established practices when there's no clear alternatives? Doogie Beattie, GB News, down on the farm.
Our ever-invented Northern Ireland correspondent there, Doogie Beattie, on the question of red, white and possibly one day blue diesel. It's time now for my daily interview series, Money Talks. And my guest is none other than David Davis. He's a former Cabinet Minister, of course, a former Tory leadership candidate and the long-standing MP for Halton Price and Howden. A big political beast. He hit the headlines last week for dramatically telling Boris Johnson in the name of God go during Prime Minister's questions, becoming the most senior Conservative so far to demand that Boris Johnson steps down over the Partygate scandal. Since then, the former Brexit Secretary has called on the government to scrap April's national insurance rise, claiming that going through with that tax increase would lose the Tories' loyal voter base. And here he is, today's Money Talks guest. It's the former Cabinet Minister, David Davis. David, great to see you in the studio. This is a finance and economics show, but it's a big political moment. And you are a former chairman of the Commons Public Accounts Committee. You have a huge, you've always had a huge interest in economic policy making. I can vouch for that over 25 years of being a journalist in this country. So let's start with this national insurance rise coming in April, part of the triple whammy: higher taxes, higher energy bills, further inflationary increase in the spring. Why do you want to scrap that national insurance increase?
Start with your triple whammy on ordinary families. Test of every policy is what effect will it have on ordinary families. That's really the final test. They're going to be tight. Their budgets are going to be as tight as they come this April, and that increase in national insurance is almost going to be the final nail for them. So number one, it's cruel, frankly. Number two, it's unnecessary. I'll come back to that in a second. Number three, it's going to do huge damage to the economy. I mean, if you wanted to pick a tax which has the worst trade-off between raising money and causing an impact on growth, national insurance is it. National insurance is it, because it deters people from working extra. It deters employees from taking people on, because there's an employer component of it as well. It cuts their effective demand, how much they spend consumer. So it cuts all other taxes. It cuts the amount you get in VAT and other things. So it's not going to raise 12 billion, nothing like. And anyway, you don't need it.
David, just hold on there for 1 minute. We're just going to sort out your mic because there's been a bit of a mic failure. Yeah. The reason we're talking to David Davis, of course, is because in April there's going to be an increase in national insurance for both employers and employees. It's a 1.25 percentage point increase. It's worth about 12 billion quid a year to the government. There is now a cabinet split on this issue, which On the Money's been talking about for quite a while. It's now on the front page of the newspapers. So thanks for that, dealing with that technical issue, David. We could hear you before. Yeah. You've got a loud voice, but we want our viewers and listeners to hear you even better. Right. There is now this split. Rishi Sunak is apparently calling this the Prime Minister's tax rise. Yeah. Downing Street are saying, but it was in Rishi's budget, etc., etc. Yeah. It would be a really big deal, wouldn't it, for the Treasury not to go through with a tax rise that's been announced and legislated for?
Yeah, that's right. In fact, we have passed a special law on this. I mean, on it, 44 Tories abstained and 10 voted against. So there are 54 of us who don't like it anyway. Even Labour are now saying, I mean, Labour doesn't normally go for tax cuts, but even
Rachel Reeves, she's calling you are a member, David Davis, of a high tax party, says the Shadow Chancellor. How does that make you feel?
Well, you have to remember, we all talk about Boris winning the 2019 election. Of course he did. But when I went round 17 of the swing seats, 16 on Red Wall, the thing that came up on the doorstep all the time was Jeremy Corbyn would put our taxes up. And what we're doing, what they feared that Jeremy Corbyn would do. So it's really serious. Also, the other side of it, and again, this is both a reason and an excuse for the Treasury, is that they are now raising more money than they forecast when they set the budget.
Because unemployment's been lower than we thought, growth has been quite good, there's been more VAT receipts.
Yep. I mean, basically, they've collected about 18 and 19 billion more in taxes, and after they've overspent, all the fraudulent stuff we heard about yesterday from the minister who resigned, they're about 13 billion more. They thought almost exactly what they were hoping to get out of this. So there's no reason at all not to change your mind. Right.
We're on the money here, so I'm going to say something back to you, if I may, that you wouldn't get in other interviews. Yeah. Yes, there's been more money than the Treasury thought. On the other hand, because the Treasury has sold so many gilts, government debt, a form of government debt that's linked to the RPI, the Retail Price Index, which is now above 7%, much higher than the Treasury estimated. Rishi Sunak's people would say, yes, there's a bit more money from extra tax, but we're paying out a lot more than we thought we would be in debt interest. Well, they cancel each other out. You're not being responsible, David Davis.
Well, with great respect to them, they've sort of rather missed a trick. I've been saying, you probably remember, since halfway through the pandemic, we've got to treat this like a war loan. The borrowings on this. You're talking that the numbers are all over the shop, but let's say 400 billion.
Yeah, roughly.
Centre point.
That's what this pandemic has cost us.
Cost of COVID, right?
Furlough, business support loans, etc.
Less than total debt, less than 100% of the economy. In 1945, it's 250%. In 1918, 200%. What do? We spent 50 years paying off. We just paid off the Second World War loan a few years ago, and the First World War loan a few years before that. We should have been creating very long instruments when the interest rate was very low And the premium would have been low because the expectations were low.
Super long-term loans.
Super long-term
with an OK return, lower than market return, but institutions would have put that money forward in return for not return on capital, but return of capital,
That's
as
right.
we say.
And that would have locked it in. It would have sort of sterilised it, to use a techie term. It would have sterilised it out of the... And then you balance the books after that. You don't try and sort of half balance the books, half in COVID, half out. You do it that way. That's the intelligent way to do it. And I can't really work out why they didn't while we were going through this, because it would have been... Remember what the prospects were like on interest rates a year ago. Completely different to now. So they better do it now before it gets worse, frankly.
You're a pretty wily, if I may say so, political operator.
That's a compliment.
You've been in the Whip's office. You've obviously been Europe Minister, Brexit Secretary. You've worked at the highest echelons of British politics. But I also know you love campaigning on the doorsteps, talking to constituents. You're in a kind of an early red wall seat yourself. You're up there on Humberside, though you've held that seat...
Yorkshire, if you don't mind.
You've held that seat for a long time. How much danger is your party in here if this triple whammy of increases in the cost of living go through? To what extent could your party lose touch, not just with your traditional voters, but those red wall voters who drove your majority in 2019?
Oh, completely, I think. I mean, you're talking about 40-something seats, I think it's 48, that they count as red wall. I mean, odd definition. But
so if you lose those, you have to double it because then they would go to Labour. There's your 80 seat.
We're gone.
There's a 90-seat majority gone.
And the nightmare is we wouldn't lose to Labour. We'd lose to a coalition of Labour and SNP.
So the UK's integrity...
everything. Right? So it's really serious. And we start from the point that there's no Jeremy Corbyn. You know, I mean, whatever you say about Keir Starmer...
He's more credible than Jeremy Corbyn.
He may not be very great at dispatch box and all that, but he's not a threat. I had an ex-Tory minister, retired one now, saying to me the other day, if I woke up in the morning and Jeremy Corbyn was Prime Minister, I wouldn't break into a sweat. Now, that's very worrying for us. Very worrying.
If Keir Starmer was Prime Minister.
Sorry,
and look at the front bench. Rachel Reeves, former Bank of England economist. Yvette Cooper, very experienced person from a moderate wing of the Labour Party as Shadow Home Secretary. They've got credible people on the front bench now who could give you guys a run for their money.
That's right. And what I would say to our own side is don't patronise the northern voter. You know, when I was knocking on those doors, you talk about welders and bricklayers and lorry drivers. They may not have 2 degrees, they may not, they may not have all the qualifications, but they're just as smart as you and me when it comes to looking at what they're going to have to pay. They forgive my language, they can see through bullshit just as well as you and I can. And so we've got to treat them like conventional Tories. They want to have low taxes. They want to have decent services too, but they want to have low taxes, And when we're talking about all the levelling up stuff, let's use a bit of economic sense while we're at it. I mean, and actually the north of England has been underinvested for a long, long time. The Treasury rules basically worked against it. It means there are lots of opportunities to do things like de-bottleneck railway lines, improve this, that and the other in terms of the infrastructure, and to get fast economic returns. And we can do that. We've got to use our heads and we've got to use our imagination to make sure we deliver what we led them to think we were going to deliver. Levelling up, but also sensible, low-tax conservatism, which they then will support. Bear in mind, before the 1930s, the Tory party grew off the back of working class classes.
Indeed.
And it can do so again.
You've known Boris Johnson for many years, right back to his days as a Brussels correspondent for The Telegraph. I know you admire the guy, you've worked with him. You resigned after the Chequers agreement and then he resigned a few days later. Obviously, you two were in very, very close touch. Him as then Foreign Secretary outgoing, you as outgoing Brexit Secretary. He does have this reputation of being good at talking to crowds, good at sort of jollying people along on the campaign trail and all the rest of it. Does he really get ordinary people? Does he really understand how the majority of British people live, particularly outside the M25?
Well, I think so. I mean, look, he has a celebrity factor. You take him to a marketplace in my constituency, or for that matter in Rotherham, a crowd will gather.
Yeah, people want selfies.
All of that.
First name terms, hello Boris.
All that stuff, and yeah, how many politicians are known by their first name?
Well, you have to be a pop star, don't you?
Yeah, that's right. So
Madonna, Sting.
He is a sort of pop star. He is a sort of pop star. The difficulty is, look, when you're Prime Minister, things come thick and fast all the time. All the time. It's one of the reasons that political instinct matters. So to take a stark example, Thatcher's political instincts were very clear, very well directed.
So you could almost preempt a decision she was going to make because she had that kind of roadmap, the DNA.
You telegraph to everybody where you're going.
Yeah.
And so they can make, it's true of any leadership. It's true of military leadership. It's true of corporate leadership. The really best leaders sort of emanate direction. Yeah. And what's happened in the last 2 years, and I don't actually blame Boris for this, I mean, other things you might argue about, but what's happened in the last few years is sort of dissipated government. Parliament hasn't actually existed. It's been like it's been like being, sort of going into a sort of parish council in a barn.
Cocktail parties just don't work on Zoom, do they?
now. So, but the point is, if you're a minister and you have to go to the House of Commons normally, not during COVID, but normally, you get nervous. I used to spend my night before questions studying up and knowing my stuff. And I think the quality of government's dissipated. And that affects it all the way from Boris right down to the bottom. And that lack of clear direction is important. He's got to reinstate that. He's got to find that.
Is he going to be Prime Minister this time next year?
Well, my hunch is no. I called on him to resign. The reason I did so was because I was afraid of a death of 1,000 cuts. Tory party is not quite the sort of vicious, ruthless machine of removing leaders that people think it is.
Yeah.
John Major.
Theresa May hung around for a long time.
A long, long time. And I don't want to see a death of 1,000 cuts because, look, the world is in a tense state. Ukraine, more domestically, France and us over the Channel, Taiwan on the horizon.
Chinese belligerents.
All of that. Economic issues coming down the road as well.
And we're fixated on birthday cakes and cheese and wine parties.
We have a very narrow bandwidth. And so, we have to widen that bandwidth by getting out of this.
What happens to your party if you go through with this NIC increase, which was counter to your election manifesto? Could these tax rises lose the Tories their majority?
Yes, in terms, yes. Because once this happened, you won't get it back. I mean, people have talked. I mean, Rishi describes himself as a low-tax Tory, right? And the sort of story that's gone around, I don't know whether it's what he means, is that there'll be a cut of 1% in income tax just before the election. That won't hack it. If we've penalised them when they're at their toughest, when their personal budgets are at their toughest, they'll remember that for a long time. Just like ERM, they remember it.
The exchange rate mechanism in '92. Your party lost your reputation for economic competence for at least a decade. David Davis-Scott are up there. We're so grateful to you coming into the studio here on The Money on such a big day in politics. David Davis there, our former Brexit secretary, our latest On The Money guest. Apologies for some of the non-daytime language in that discussion. It's a grown-up discussion. That's all we've got time for today. Thanks for joining me. We'll be back same time, same place tomorrow. This is GB News. I'm Liam Halligan, and that was On The Money.
Hello again. Dry and cloudy once more for most today, but overall, generally a little brighter than most days so far this week. A bit more sunshine around, but there will be some rain in the northwest being created by this deepening area of low pressure that's also going to bring some very strong winds tonight across northern Scotland. But let's deal with the weather fronts first of all, bringing some rain across the Highlands and the Western Isles and the Northern Isles later today. But elsewhere, high pressure is still in control, so most places dry. And as I mentioned, it's a little brighter, certainly over the Midlands, parts of eastern England, generally brighter skies compared to recent days with a bit of sunshine at times. And it's a bit warmer as a result as well. Where it stays gloomy, temperatures struggling, but generally up to 8-9 degrees. It is going to turn very windy, though, tonight as the rain pushes southwards through the central belt and into Northern Ireland. We will see the winds really picking up, especially across Orkney, where gusts of 70 miles an hour, maybe even a little bit more for a time, are likely to cause some disruption, particularly to travel services. So there is a Met Office yellow warning in place here. Generally, it'll be a milder night as well, with temperatures mostly holding up 4 or 5 degrees above freezing at least. But it will be a damp start, certainly for parts of the Midlands, South Wales, a grey, damp start for Cardiff and Swansea. And some of that patchy rain trickles into southwest England during the course of Thursday morning. But generally then skies brighten up once more, with most places seeing a bit of sunshine during Thursday afternoon. Temperatures will be higher as well. 11 or 12 there in Cardiff and London, but only 6 or 7 in the far northeast Aberdeen, and there will be a strong wind blowing here. It will ease down as we go through Thursday morning and continue to ease down during the evening, and that means with clear skies on Thursday night, we will see a widespread frost on Friday morning. But high pressure is back for Friday, so for most it's a dry